In August 2018, Frederick, Colorado, looked like the kind of town people moved to for peace and stability. Quiet streets, modern houses, friendly neighbors, and a sense that serious crime belonged somewhere far away. It was a place where families believed they were safe. Among them lived the Watts family. Shannon Watts was 34 years old, energetic, ambitious, and highly organized. She was a devoted mother to two young daughters, Bella and Celeste, and she was pregnant with her third child. Shannon believed strongly in structure, planning, and visibility. She shared her life openly on social media, daily routines, family trips, birthdays, and affectionate moments with her husband, Chris. Chris Watts, on the surface, appeared calm, reserved, and dependable. He worked steadily, avoided conflict, and presented himself as a quiet family man. Together, they seemed balanced, her energy paired with his calm. But behind closed doors, the marriage was under growing strain. Financial pressure had been building for years. Debt mounted. Arguments became more frequent. Shannon sensed emotional distance and confided in friends that she felt her husband pulling away. Chris, meanwhile, felt overwhelmed, trapped, and increasingly invisible within his own life. On the night of August 12th, Shannon returned home late from a business trip. She was exhausted and anxious about the state of her marriage. Messages she sent to friends suggested fear, uncertainty, and emotional pain. A few hours later, all communication stopped. By morning, something was clearly wrong. Shannon's close friend noticed the silence immediately. This was not normal behavior. Within hours, police were contacted for a welfare check. When officers arrived at the Watts home, they expected confusion. Instead, they found stillness. The house looked untouched. Shannon's phone was inside. Her purse and medication were left behind. Her car sat in the driveway. The children's belongings remained neatly arranged. There was no sign of urgency, no note, no explanation. Chris Watts greeted officers calmly. He told them that after an argument, Shannon had taken the children and left. But investigators quickly noticed the inconsistencies. Parents do not leave without essentials. Children do not disappear without preparation. Nothing inside the house suggested a sudden departure. As police continued searching, news crews began arriving. Chris agreed to speak publicly, standing outside his home, asking for his family to return safely. His words were polite and controlled, but something about his demeanor unsettled both detectives and viewers across the country. He showed no visible panic, no desperation, no emotional collapse. Instead, his behavior appeared measured, almost rehearsed. Detectives began closely examining his actions. One of the most important developments came from a neighbor's surveillance camera. The footage showed Chris early that morning, repeatedly walking between his house and his truck, loading items inside. His movements were deliberate and rushed, completely different from his usual routine. When questioned, Chris claimed he was preparing for work, but his timeline didn't match the evidence. His explanations shifted subtly each time he spoke. As pressure increased, investigators uncovered a critical truth. Chris Watts had been living a double life. He was involved in an extramarital affair and had begun imagining a future without responsibilities, no marriage, no children, no financial stress. Yet at the same time, he desperately wanted to maintain his image as a good husband and father. To Chris, reputation mattered more than honesty. This internal conflict, freedom versus appearance, was tearing him apart. As detectives continued questioning him, his story became increasingly unstable. Details contradicted earlier statements. Small lies piled on top of each other. The perfect image he had built over years was beginning to crack. Investigators scheduled a polygraph test, and that decision would change everything. Inside the interrogation room, the pressure was intense. Chris Watts struggled to maintain control. His answers grew shorter. Long silences filled the space between questions. His body language changed. The calm exterior he had relied on for so long began to fracture. Detectives recognized the signs immediately. A man losing control of his own narrative. Eventually, he broke. The truth that followed stunned investigators and shocked the nation. The disappearance of the Watts family was not an accident, not a misunderstanding, and not the result of an unknown intruder. It was a crime committed by someone who had spent years blending into normal life without drawing attention. As details emerged, the public reaction was immediate and overwhelming. News networks replayed Chris's interviews, now analyzing every pause, every glance, every word. What once seemed calm now felt cold. What once sounded hopeful now appeared calculated. Friends, coworkers, and neighbors struggled to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the reality revealed. The case sparked a national conversation about deception, control, and the danger of appearances. Social media, once viewed as a window into real life, was now seen as a carefully curated performance. The Watts family had looked perfect, but perfection had been an illusion. In November 2018, Chris Watts pleaded guilty to multiple charges. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom remained silent as the sentence was read. There were no outbursts, no relief, only the weight of irreversible loss. In the years that followed, the Watts family case became one of the most studied true crime stories in the United States. Psychologists analyzed Chris's need for control and validation. Journalists examined financial stress, emotional detachment, and the pressure to maintain an image. Viewers continued to ask the same haunting question: how did no one see this coming? Perhaps the most disturbing lesson of this case is not the crime itself, but how quietly it unfolded. There were no dramatic warnings, no visible chaos, just silence, denial, and a carefully maintained facade. Evil did not arrive loudly. It did not look dangerous. It looked ordinary. The Watts family tragedy remains a chilling reminder that the most destructive secrets are often hidden behind smiles, routines, and perfect pictures, and that sometimes the truth only reveals itself when it is already too late. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, give a like, and stay tuned for many interesting stories based on real events.